Welcome back, friends. I am so excited to introduce you to Maria Elsenbroek. Maria, welcome and thank you for taking time out to be here with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
If you can share your background, just who you are, who is Maria, and where you're located at, just a little bit about you.
Oh, sure. My name is Maria Elsenbroek, as you know, and I am in Chicago. I was born and raised in Chicago, and I work in the HR and finance industry for the past 11 years. And yeah, I love it here. Love it. Love the change of the weather.
So my hometown, I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago, lived in Beverly. So that is my hometown. Proud graduate of Chicago Vocational High School, Chicago State University, and then I went to Indiana to Purdue and then back to Chicago for National Louis. So it's truly my home. Yep. So tell me about your pulmonary hypertension journey.
Well, back in 2006, my daughter, Nicole Elsenbroek, she was only 4 years old, and she was having problems breathing. During the middle of the night, she would wake up consistently. She had a heart defect when she was born, but then, and she had a cardiology team that was assigned to her already since she was born. But then the progression over the years, we started noticing differences in her. And we took her to the doctor many times, month over month. And, there was a time where the family practice doctor said that she was making those noises with her breathing just to get attention. And so I kept all the records and everything. And finally, we got to the point where her platelets were really low. It was February of 2006. We changed doctors. We went to the pediatric doctor, friend of mine, and they were able to run some more tests. And they found that her platelets were really low. And then we went to her cardiologist. And the cardiologist basically told me he felt that nothing was really wrong. But in speaking further with him, before they did the echocardiogram on her, the doctor's like, I'm sure there's nothing wrong and this and that. And after he did the echo, he came walking in the room that we were waiting in, like as if he had a tail between his legs, like saying, I'm so sorry. And he apologized for assuming that nothing was wrong with her. And he came out and he told us that she had pulmonary hypertension. Mind you, she was only 4. And so when he came in and he told me that, he apologized and he literally said, I should listen to parents, or especially mothers, when they have a gut instinct that something's wrong with their children, and just listen and do the test and then come back and let you know the details instead of assuming that nothing was wrong.
Maria, help me understand how much time had passed between that mother gut instinct, but being told that she was only trying to get attention to the correct diagnosis. How much time had passed?
It was about 6 or 7 months. I had gone to the doctor constantly. Noticed that she was running outside. I have friends that have kids around the same age. We all had babies around the same time, and all their kids were able to run around in the heat outside. And there's my daughter. At the time when we started taking her to the doctor, she was about 3 years old. And she's over there gasping for air. Her face is red. She can't run. She's lagging behind everybody. And I was having dreams telling me that something was wrong with her lungs. I'm not kidding you. Okay. And intuition and premonition just always kept telling me something's wrong. So when I finally decided to change the doctors and we went to the new group, and then we went back to her cardiologist, and then they came back and told us about this, that's when we, it hit home. We were devastated because we never thought our baby girl at 4 years old would have a severe to moderate pulmonary hypertension.
That's right.
And immediately they ran to go and take her through the cardiac group at Lutheran General. They ran to take her to a cardiac catheter to double check everything. And they told me, and I can tell you every detail, they told me that a child at 4 years old should have a heart pressure of 20. She was at 70. on her right side of her heart.
Oh my goodness.
And so the doctors are like, we need to get her on oxygen immediately. You could see her chest, her chest pumping, her heart pumping through her chest because she had gotten so frail thin. And I tried everything. And then once she got the oxygen, when they, put her on immediate oxygen, because she can't sleep without it, even to this day. And so we ended up, luckily at that time when her cardiac group had just gotten Dr. David Tholey assigned to their team. And he had worked with Dr. Robin Barst. I don't know if you were familiar with her, but she was the pediatric doctor that did extensive training out of New York Presbyterian Columbia University Hospital in New York. And so they told us that the main doctor that would be able to address this concern that is pediatric was out of New York. I'm not kidding you. I called everywhere at this time. I was looking to see if there's anything closer because I was afraid of flying. I always flying. But you know what? I said, I gotta be the bigger person. I have to be the strong one now because I have to be there for my baby girl. And so I decided, whatever we got to do to make my baby girl feel comfortable and get better. I was so scared, beyond scared. So we ended up being advised to go to New York Presbyterian to fly out to Manhattan. We went to Manhattan. So mind you, she went to the new doctor group in February of 2006. In March of 2006, that's when they diagnosed her and did the cardiac catheter. And so then they started her on oxygen regimen, but they were constantly keeping an eye on her between March and July until we were able to go to New York.
Got it.
And then once we got to New York, it was crazy. It was craziness. We had to go there for a full week. We went to do extensive testing because they had to do echocardiogram. And when they took echoes in New York, they didn't take just one or two pictures. They took like 300-400 pictures of her heart from every angle that you can think of. And so when we met Dr. Barst, she fell in love with my daughter because she was this little, young little thing with big brown eyes. And they did another cardiac catheter on her. And just before they were going to take her in, I got to tell you this one, she's always been intrigued with the medical field. Now I know why. And when they were walking her around the area waiting for her turn to go to cardiac catheter, the nurses were just doting on her. And so then she goes to this one section in the cardiac waiting room in the hospital, and the nurse walks her over to this one area and shows her all these little shelves filled with little, things like bandages, cotton swabs, whatever it need be, but it was a whole wall full of items. Do you know her eyes lit up? And she looked at the nurse and said, "Do you have a bag so I can take some stuff home with me? So when we go back, me and mommy go back to the hotel room, then I could play doctor with mommy and put bandages on her." They gave her a gigantic bag filled of stuff so she can go play with me back at the room.
I love it. That is beautiful. First, let me say this. Thank you for your diligence, right? And the persistence and not giving up and knowing when something is wrong, because part of the stories I keep hearing is that, people are told, oh, nothing's wrong. Some people are just told, oh, go lose some weight, or it's other things. And it's like, sometimes it's this, but sometimes it actually is something that you need to check out. So tell me about treatment. You mentioned oxygen, but what else were her treatment options?
They didn't really go into detail about the treatment options until we went to New York. And when we went to New York and we met with Dr. Barst, God rest her soul, she was a big impact on her. And she basically talked us into doing the medical research, which I was all worried about at first. Mm-hmm. But once she did the cardiac catheter and she was able to test how the medicine would work on her, then, we waited a couple weeks to see how her improvement, if she had any improvement with just the pill, because it was either the pill form of Bosentan or Tracleer, as they call it, or put her on a heart pump because of how severe she was. And so what they ended up finding was after a few weeks, once they started her on Tracleer, her little body just, conformed to it and adapted to it really quickly. And so then they kept checking and we had to keep flying out to New York to continue the treatments, and they paid for everything because she was medical research. We stayed at the finest hotels at Upper East Side of New York, the nice fancy area and beautiful hotels, and she felt like it was a little vacation for her. She didn't even think it was medically necessary. I'm just hanging out with mommy. Mm-hmm. And you know what? She actually adapted so well to the medication. But yes, she had to be on oxygen. She couldn't sleep with oxygen because I'll be honest with you, even to this day, everybody thinks because she's on oxygen, she really doesn't need it. And I'm like a stickler. I'm like, do not assume anything, even with treatments themselves, she may look normal. Okay. She may look normal, but you could tell by how certain conditions are outside, whether it's really hot and humid, she starts breathing weird. Mm-hmm. Okay. And everybody never got a chance to understand exactly all that's entailed with that condition itself.
That's right.
And you know what? It was hard for her to grasp into it as she was getting older and going to school and things like that. So, I had to bring to light because she was afraid to show her oxygen tank in class. Mm-hmm. And I sat her down and I let her know, I said, you're extra special. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You need that little extra help because God made you a little extra different, but not in a bad way. And I let her know, I said, you know what, if you want me to come to class and explain to people why you need it, I'll be more than happy to do it. Yeah. And do you know, I actually went to her class. I did a presentation for pulmonary hypertension to her 4 classes that were, because her classmates, there was too many in her class in her grade school. So we had to, bring all the 4 classes together. And we brought everybody into the room and I was able to communicate with everybody and let them know. A lot of them knew her since she was in kindergarten. But as they got older, so many different other schools were kind of, combining together. So not very many kids knew of her. And so I had to bring it into light slowly and very gently because she's very shy.
That's right.
And so I was able to do the presentation, and luckily they had a science class and it was about the heart. So I was able to tie everything together. And do you know that they all made her feel so comfortable? When I asked the class, I said, do you know anybody with this kind of condition? And only maybe a handful of kids knew. The rest didn't know. And I said, do you guys want to know who has it that's in your class? And they were all intrigued. And I said, and I started crying when I was saying this too. And I said, my baby girl. And if you guys all know me, you all know Nicole. And Nicole started turning red and she started tearing up a little bit. And I didn't ask her to come in front to introduce herself. I just said, you know what, just do me a favor. All I ask you to do is just be watchful for her. She's outside playing, running around there. You hear her breathing a little heavy. Be watchful and say, you know what, Nicole, we think you need a little oxygen. Do you want us to walk with you back to the room so you could sit there and put your oxygen on? Do you know after that day, they all did that. Wonderful. They all paid attention to make sure she was okay because she was so embarrassed to let them see that she had oxygen, that she needed oxygen. She felt like that would make her look awful. Yeah. And so, it was wonderful that I was able to do that. I wanted to do so much more, but then it's difficult because she gets so shy and she doesn't want me to put attention to her. But I wish there was more awareness. I wish there was more doctors that knew about this. Now they're starting to get more doctors out here. Do you know that Ann and Robert Laurie Hospital, Children's Hospital, finally has pulmonary hypertension team for cardiology? But she's almost 21
Oh my goodness.
Okay. She's doing great. But you know what? It took this many years. The other thing I wanted to bring to light was a lot of doctors don't pay attention when they do surgeries. They don't realize the extensiveness that it takes for the body to recoup itself after surgery, especially after having anesthesia, because your body's under to be able to keep that body comfortable.
That's right.
And blood and that heart rate is supposed to be slowed. So then when it comes back to normalcy, when you come back up and you wake up from the surgery, a lot of doctors are not bringing up, coming up with, letting these patients, and I'll give you an idea what happened, but my daughter had hip surgery back in 2020, back in February of 2020. And a lot of doctors are not familiar with how they have to take extra care of pulmonary hypertension patients. Okay. She wasn't sent to the ICU right after surgery. She was immediately taken into a second surgery. I'm not going to go into full details because I know, this is, you want to know like a little other things to be able to move forward to kind of give awareness to this condition. But the biggest thing that I saw in that time frame, she had 3 surgeries in 2020 for the same hip.
Oh my goodness.
The doctor that performed to put the plate in her right hip in February had to do immediate surgery 2 weeks later because the screws broke. And not once during the February surgery or the March surgery did he rush her over to ICU. Her heart rate, luckily I was there with her each time, but he sent her home immediately after the February surgery. And I noticed she was having problems breathing. She was having problems trying to catch her breath. She was coughing. I didn't with, because I'm not a doctor, but I knew as a mother that something was up. Something's up with, was uncomfortable. And so when they rushed her to do the second surgery, roughly 2 weeks later, because the screws broke, because they didn't put enough screws on the side. That's another story in itself. And he right away rushed her into doing surgery 2 weeks and a day later.
Oh my
and within that week, she lost her voice. She couldn't talk. I stayed with her the whole time. I contacted her cardiologist. Not once did this orthopedic doctor get her over to ICU. She needed a blood transfusion because her hemoglobin was so low. Luckily, I insisted and demanded that they get the cardiology team involved immediately because something was up. Because I remembered every fact. And when it's your baby or it's your family member, you're going to remember things. So I remembered that especially with pulmonary hypertension patients, they have to have their saturations of their oxygen have to be in line with their heart rate. So if their saturations of their oxygen is at 99, their heart rate should be at 99. So in this instance, after that second surgery, her heart rate was 110 and her oxygen saturations were at 85. She was barely able to breathe. So I insisted her cardiologist get involved. I insisted they run an echocardiogram. And the day they were thinking of letting her go home was when they finally listened and got her an echocardiogram. She ended up having her heart rate, her heart pressures, and her right side of her heart were at 93%. She was 7% away from being heart failure, complete heart failure. They had to rush her to the ICU. They had to put nitric oxygen on her to help calm her heart down. And in some ways, I say things happen for a reason. She was introduced to Dr. Dia, the adult pulmonary hypertension doctor out of Christ Hospital. And he saw her. They were all nervous. They got the pulmonary doctor. They got Dr. Dia, who's a cardiologist, but he's a specialist for pulmonary hypertension. He couldn't believe how bad and badly severe her heart had gotten. So he let her know that he was probably more than likely going to have to put her on a pump do you know, she started crying buckets of tears because she was insistent she wasn't going to do it.
Mhm.
And so they did a cardiac catheter that weekend, right? And this was in March of 2020. And Dr. Dia, they had her awake. And now she was really, remember when she was intrigued when she was at the hospital in New York with all the little
Yeah.
supplies? Okay, she was intrigued when they kept her awake for the cardiac catheter and they had it going through her carotid artery here.
Yes.
And she was insistent that her heart was as stubborn as she is. And so she said to the doctor, she said, how does it look as she's awake as they're doing the cardiac catheter on her? And do you know, Dr. Dia came back to her room shortly after that cardiac catheter. And he said, we were cracking up inside when you said, see, my heart is as stubborn as I am.
Mm.
And the doctor said, well, remember how we mentioned we may have to put you on a pump? And she said, yes. And she started crying again. He said, well, we might not have to. Let's try you on the Opsumit medicine, which is a newer, it's a smaller pill, a smaller dose, but it's a stronger acting one, but it's only FDA approved for anybody 18 and older.
Okay.
So they put her on that medicine, and do you know, and then they also had to put her on tadalafil, which is the generic form of Cialis.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember studies back in the day. I know they had studies back in the day for Viagra and how it helped, pump the blood easier in the system for how that medicine works in the pulmonary hypertension patients. And so that one's short acting because the Viagra only lasts for a short period of time. So they have to constantly keep putting pills in to keep it. So when they put her on the tadalafil and they changed her medicine to Opsumit, she still had to take a few other pills and be consistently on her oxygen, but she doesn't wear her oxygen during the day because this new medication they put her on of Opsumit and tadalafil has made her quality of life so much better throughout the day.
I love it. So tell me this. So now you said she's almost 21.
Yes.
What is life like for her? Is she in college? What is she doing? She's graduated from school. Tell me about her.
Yes. She graduated. So during this whole thing of all the surgeries she had back in 2020, she was graduating from high school.
Okay.
And I think it worked out in some sense because she wasn't able to walk because because of her hip surgeries that had gone wrong. She ended up having to do a wheelchair, but they didn't end up having a big ceremony back then. So in some sense, it worked out so she didn't have to go in front of people with a wheelchair because she was not happy. But she graduated. We let her take some time off because this was a little bit traumatic stress for her. And then she just started back up at school. So both my daughter and myself and my son actually are all in college together this summer. God help me.
Oh my goodness. Are you at the same school?
Yes. We're all at the community college right now. And you know what? If this is competitive, I didn't realize how competitive my kids are, but they are.
Love it.
They are. So I'm like, okay, whatever I got to do, even though I'm the better one in class, but that's beside the point. But you know what? They're striving to really compete with me to make sure that they're doing better than me, which they are. And I'm so proud of them. And she actually, her plans are to become a cardiac nurse.
Oh my goodness, Maria, that is wonderful. So is her passion really to give back to help other patients diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension?
Especially kids. She wants to work with kids because she realized back in the day, she really loved the nurses that helped take care of her when she was younger.
Yeah.
And she wants the same because then she can go back and especially for kids who have pulmonary hypertension, she can say, you know what? I have it. You could talk to me. Tell me what you're thinking and feeling. I'm here for you and I'll help you in any way. She wants to work in the actual doctor's office so then she can get to know the kids and be able to communicate with them individually one by one.
Well, I'm going to tell you, my mother was a nurse, Maria. So yes. So you are going to have to stay in touch with me because I want to be able to just cheer her on from the sidelines as she does that. And thank you just for all that you do. as I share with you, I'm interviewing patients, caregivers, medical professionals, people from the community on the road to get to 100 interviews. But,
Oh,
your story to me is just a story of the importance of resilience. And you cannot judge the way someone presents on the outside to truly understand what's going on in the inside. And
right.
also, to me, there's, you started out in one way, but you eventually got her good medical care because you advocated for her. And now she is advocating for herself and then advocating for other people in the future. So, I will just say, I do hope to one day meet her because she really sounds amazing. But I've met you. So through you, I feel like I have a connection to her. What words of wisdom or advice would you give to, I guess, to me and to others who are out here really trying to increase awareness and continue this work that we so desperately need?
I would, I think the more awareness to talking to people, putting videos out there, giving more details, how they did for COVID, people would address and bring on their videos of what they're going through. I think if we did that more for PH patients, to give people more awareness, because you can't assume, just because they have a placard, because they, nobody understands. You may look normal, and my daughter has a placard so she can park close to places so she doesn't have to walk so far because of the fact she loses saturations when she walks.
Mhm.
Well, you know what? Don't assume that nothing's wrong with her.
That's
You
right.
know, keep in mind, everybody has different difficulties. So never judge someone by the outside of their cover, is what I'm going to say, because you never know what's going on internally. And you always have to keep an open mind. Just be mindful, be watchful, be kind, be considerate, and just, see how they are.
Mhm.
Talk to them, get to know them. And
Yeah,
then you really get to know the person. And then you might be surprised with what you hear.
that's right. I love that, be mindful and don't judge and don't make assumptions. And that to me is a message that people need to hear. I remember my mother, when she was first diagnosed, her colleagues thought, "You're fine, nothing's wrong," but she wasn't okay. And people are not faking it, and they're not doing it for attention. No one is intentionally trying to be out of breath. Nobody intentionally, trying to have these symptoms. So you bring a valid point that people really do need to hear. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with me today that maybe I have not asked you that you just want to share?
Nothing. She is very strong-willed, very genuinely kind. Her heart speaks so clearly. I think anybody with PH, pulmonary hypertension, has the biggest heart there is. And I'm not saying size-wise, I'm saying so much love and care, and they want to just love everybody. And you know what? Especially the ones that have illnesses, they want to love them even more. And that for a fact with your mother being a nurse, and hearing that my daughter wants to be a nurse, it just brought me to tears, because I know she wants to do better by everybody, because there was really not enough out there to be aware for her condition. And I felt bad for her because I tried everything possible, and I was by her side. I was by her side from day one, and after dealing with that one doctor, that he was a family practice, and it was mainly because of ignorance, because he did not understand it. And I can see, but I wish they had more awareness. That's all I ask, is more awareness, more teaching. I know Dr. Tholey is teaching more, and he actually had her come to a few of his presentations when he was in the hospital. And she actually wants to go and work under him, to be able to be his person, that he can show, okay, this is one of my patients that I used to take care of that has PH, and she wants to intern with him. So, it's just all coming in full circle. And I think it would be beneficial if we did bring more awareness. I wish I can help in some way. I even made a video for a presentation for my class with PowerPoint, which I can share with you if you'd like.
Absolutely.
And Yeah, it came out beautiful, and it just went into detail, just brief detail. And I would love to do more for that. I would.
I love it. Well, thank you again for taking time to be here with me today to share your story. Because
Thank you.
again, the mantra that we have with the Roberta Banks Wheeler Pulmonary Hypertension Awareness Group, which is a nonprofit organization, our
Mhm.
mantra is just awareness, empowerment, and hope. Together, we can make a difference, because this is something that's going to take all of us to come together to listen, to care, and make sure that people get proper diagnosis, early diagnosis, and the
Right.
correct treatment by listening to them. And so even you sharing that story where someone thinks that, you're faking, no, sometimes it actually is something. So
Yeah.
just thank you again. I truly appreciate you for being here. And for those of you watching, Maria to me is the true testament of a mother's love. And she loved with her time, with her passion, that she was not going to give up until they found out what was going on with her baby. And so if you are in a situation, you're watching this and someone is telling you that maybe your baby, that everything's okay, and you truly are like Maria and you feel like everything's not okay, trust your heart, don't give up. And sometimes people won't listen to us, but we have to keep fighting. And that is what I want you to take from watching this today, is that don't give up the fight. Our loved ones deserve the best care and the best quality of life possible. So thank you all for joining, and I'll see you next time. Thank you, Maria. You are amazing.